So we added all the components we created to our templates. Now let's fine-tune them and add the real content we want to have there, starting in the header. Of course, I don't want to have this h1 tag here. Instead, I will use a couple of Bootstrap classes to create a nice looking header. So I'll create a wrapping nav element, and on this element I'll add the navbar class and then navbar default. Again, these are just Bootstrap classes which will give me this default Bootstrap header. In there, I'll place a container fluid div to have my own view container basically in there. And the first thing I want to have here is a header. For that, we get the navbar header class we can add to a div. And in this div, I want to have a clickable header. So I'll add an anchor tag with pointing to hash for now. We'll later, of course, add a route there once we learned how to do this. And this should have the class navbar brand. To give this brand-like text style, I'll say recipe book here, since this is the name of our application. So that's the header part of our header, so this main brand part. Now let's work on the actual links. For this, I'll add a div, which will receive the collapse class and then the navbar collapse class. Now, I won't really use the collapse feature. I won't add a hamburger icon here, since we will not have many links on our header anyways. But this gives us some nice styles. And of course, collapse here should have an E at the end, like that. So in here, I now want to have a group of list items, so a group of links in the end. This will be an unordered list with the CSS classes nav and then navbar nav. So make sure to create this unordered list with these classes. And in there, if we add some list items, they will actually sit next to each other. So they will automatically be positioned correctly by Bootstrap. Each list item should hold a link. So here I'll add an anchor tag, also pointing to just hash for now. One for the recipe section and a second one for the shopping list section. Now with that added, I'll add another area in my header here. This will be another unordered list, which will receive the classes nav and now also navbar nav like before, but then also navbar right to position these links at the right. And actually this will only be one link here, which will receive a class of dropdown, this list item will, because later we will add our own directive, which will turn this into a working dropdown, where we can then choose some options to store our data on a server, something we'll also implement later in this course, or fetch it from there. So in this dropdown, I simply want to have my dropdown menu, which when using Bootstrap is added by adding an unordered list with the class dropdown menu. So this will hold the items of this dropdown. And here I'll add a couple of list items, which all hold some links pointing to just hash for now. One for saving data and one for fetching data. Again, this will be filled with working code later. So that's my header. Let's save it and see how it looks. It looks okay. I don't see my dropdown though. The brand looks off. So I'm not entirely happy with that. Let's see what is wrong. The brand is not working because that should be navbar, not have a H in between. So if you fix this, the brand looks all right. Now what's wrong with the dropdown? Well, the dropdown simply misses the link we would see to open the dropdown. Because this unordered class here simply is the content of the dropdown, we of course also need a link to trigger it. So let's add an anchor tag pointing to hashtag here, where I will say manage, just manage maybe. You could of course change that text. And this should have a class of dropdown toggle, because this will be the button toggling the dropdown in the end. Therefore, it will have a role of button to add some accessibility to this. Not required for this to work correctly though. And with this, now if we save this, we see the dropdown. It would be nice to have a little arrow next to it, indicating that it is a dropdown. So next to manage, I'll add a span with a class of Caret, which will give us this arrow pointing to the bottom, this arrow here. And now we get a dropdown. It won't work if we click it, because we haven't added any code which would open the dropdown. We will do this after the directives section though. So the header is now working. With that, let's move on and let's work on our recipes section.